Hello! If you're watching this video, you probably saw my last video, my animated introduction to my SPIDERSONA. And if you're here and you haven't, I'm gonna put a link in the corner because it's really cool and I spent a long time on it and I think you'll like it. But this video is gonna be a little different than what I normally do because I'm going to actually talk about one of my characters. I know, shocker. There's some general info in the video, but I wanted to go a little more in depth with it because A, my mind is a prison and I want to yap about this stuff and tell you everything that's going on in my mind because it's just been cramped in there for months and months. And B, because you guys were actually a lot more interested in it than I thought you'd be. So, which granted. Which, mentioning that, I just want to say thank you all for the overwhelming support that you guys gave my last video. Like, even though I spent a really long time on it and I wanted it to do good, I never thought you'd all have such kind, like, insightful comments about the character and would want to know more, like, as much as you guys do. So, color me surprised, honestly, and just, again, thank you for the support. It means a lot. And one more thing before we start, I just want to give a shout out to this channel called PricklyAlpaca. She's a design channel that did a couple videos like this a few years back, which ended up inspiring both of mine. And just a disclaimer, any similarities our characters may have with each other, like, you know, the extra legs or whatever, they're purely coincidental, and overall they're very different from each other. There's no theft going on within the art community. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. So we'll start with some general info about the character. Obviously, this character is based on me. She's an artist in her early 20s who lives in LA, goes to college, works a retail job, and has a very awkward and timid but also blunt personality. As is often the case, once the mask is on, she's a lot more confident and talks a lot of smack to whatever criminal she's fighting. And her general vibe is sort of silly and almost carefree, but that's mostly due to the fact that she doesn't do a lot of crime fighting while on patrol. I've noticed almost every piece of Spider-Man media portrays crime as something that's always happening on every corner of the city all the time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It does a good job at setting stakes and showing just how much good Spider-Man does for his city, often at his own expense. But that's not really the case when it comes to real life, and that's something I really enjoy about Spider-Man Homecoming. You can have your gripes about the MCU, but the fact that we get to see Peter idling around, eating lunch on rooftops, giving people directions, and jumping at the chance to stop a car or bike thief really shows that there's not shootouts and car chases going on every 5 seconds. And that's the sort of situation this character is in. She spends a lot of time waiting for something to happen, and the highlight of her patrols are usually walking someone home or maybe even stopping a car thief herself if she's lucky. Getting back to the character, and this is probably a little controversial, but she only goes on patrol when she can. Keeping her life together is a big priority, so if she has work, school, or something important, she's not gonna blow it off to go swing around downtown LA. Though this is partially because she lives about half an hour from it, and that's by car. A big part of her character is wanting to use her powers to do as much good as she can, while also being realistic about how much time she can commit to it. Moving on, like I mentioned in the animation, her universe is almost identical to ours, meaning superpowers are not real, and Spider-Man is a fictional hero with tons of media that basically everyone knows in some way. He's an inspiration to both of us, so when she got her powers, her immediate thought other than panic was, I can't do this. That pressure is something that she always puts on herself, even though she knows that anyone can wear the mask. She's only been at it a few months, and I think we can all relate to the frustration of not being immediately good at something, especially when there's an expectation that you have to be. This conflict is one that never really goes away as her story progresses. Another big thing is that currently, she has not had her quote-unquote canon event. I understand that there are certain things that usually happen in every Spider's story, but the idea that you have to go through those things in order to be Spider-Man is a little ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that she's not gonna lose anyone in the future, but losing someone close to her isn't one of the core parts of her character. And lastly, LA is not New York City. There's a small cluster of buildings tall enough to swing from, but everything other than that is pretty inconsistent. So how does she get around, you ask? Well, for that, let's segue to... Alright, abilities. This is gonna be a long one. I had a lot of different ideas that I wanted to incorporate into this character, while also making her unique and set apart from other spiders we already know. To do this, I first did research on a bunch of different kinds of spiders. Skip to this timestamp if you have arachnophobia. The ones I ended up using for reference were the purple pink-toed tarantula, the Antilles pink-toed tarantula, the purple bloom tarantula, and the white regal jumping spider. All of these fuzzy little guys make up the spider that ends up biting her, and I'm shockingly not a genetic biologist, so I'm not gonna bother trying to explain it, but let's say the base is a quote-unquote normal spider, and the ones I named had their DNA spliced into it and pumped with radiation, alright? Alright. The end result is a medium-large sized tarantula that is versatile, agile, and possesses an amount of strength that no arachnid should ever have. How does this affect our dear Violet Spider Girl? I'll tell you. The jumping spider DNA dials up her vision and hearing to 15, but similar to how you can focus or unfocus your eyes, she can turn it on and off, so she doesn't have the lovely sounds of LA blasting in her ears 24/7. Her other senses also get a general boost. In very low light levels, the scleras of her eyes start to turn black in an attempt to see better, like how our pupils dilate but more spidery. And obviously, she gains the very useful ability of being able to jump up to 30 times her body length in one go, which is about 170 feet. Now this isn't exactly a new ability, as in the games you can unlock a skill to do just that, but the highest you can go is roughly half that amount. Puts into perspective just how jumpy she really is. When fully charged, jumps like that take a lot of stamina if used in succession though, so they're mainly used for evasion, traversal, and occasionally to show off a little. This, combined with web zips, is her primary way of getting around the city. Both of the tarantulas give her heightened super strength. Rather than weaving webs to catch prey, tarantulas use their strength and speed to grab their prey before webbing them up. So I'd like to think that this would translate to her super strength being a bit higher than normal, as well as her reaction time and general swiftness. Overall, her physique is pretty rounded, with her legs being particularly more muscular than the rest. Now a downside to all of that, being so strong and jumpy takes energy, and to combat that, she has to eat. A lot. I imagine she'd keep a bunch of snacks in her backpack to munch on during patrol, and I could also see her casually walking into a deli and getting a sandwich while everyone just stares at her in disbelief. Her webs, contrary to the typical web shooters, are organic, so she's twinning with Toby in that regard, and come from a small set of glands that formed in her wrists after she was bitten. This is more of a meta decision because, well, she's not a scientist and neither am I, and if real scientists can't figure it out, then she definitely can't. Plus, web shooters wouldn't really fit with the more organic route I'm taking with this character. On that note, the webs themselves are like a muscle, so at a certain point they can get tired and, in their own way, run out. When that happens, she just has to take a break and let them recharge in a sense, which I think is a fun spin on the idea. Alright, now we get to the part that you all wanted to know more about. She can grow 4 giant, hairy tarantula legs. Well, grow may be putting it lightly. More like they rupture out of her back. She doesn't have the luxury of them being robotic like some of the Peters we know. Now, on the surface that might sound bad, because it is. The process is extremely painful, and she has little to no control over when they come out. Think of them as a sort of fight or flight response to very stressful situations. Some tarantulas, when they feel threatened, will flick off the hairs on their legs to deter predators. She can also do this, but it's usually involuntary and is more like a reaction to her spider sense. Sort of like when a doctor taps your knee and it bounces on its own. One of the Reddit threads I looked at said it feels like bits of fiberglass when the hairs get on your skin. So imagine just how painful it is when they're 20 times that size. Some tarantulas also have web spinnerets in each leg, so she does too. Once she's in the clear, the legs fall off and disintegrate, but that usually takes a while, so it's possible that she had to forcibly remove them at some point. Do with that what you will. And lastly, whenever these fight or flight situations happen, a pair of black pincer-like teeth grow over her normal canines. This wasn't originally one of her powers, but I randomly came up with it and thought it was cool. And it also lets me add an organic power that isn't super gross. I didn't really go over a lot of this in the video because I think it's pretty in character for her to gloss over this power, because, frankly, she hates it. She thinks it makes her a freak, if she wasn't one already. It adds a ton of stress, and it also makes her paranoid that someone will see them and cause her even more trouble. I remember when I was first brainstorming this character, I wanted her to have cool, useful powers like Miles. But the reality is you don't really get to pick things like that. Sometimes people just have cooler powers than you, and you just get what you get. The idea of a hero hating or not being able to use their powers isn't new, but I don't think it's been done in the context of Spider-Man. Yeah, there's often conflict about the burden of being Spider-Man, but I think that's more aimed at the role, not the powers themselves. Feel free to correct me though. Aside from all of that, she's got the usual stickiness, durability, spider sense, and healing, though her back heals particularly fast so she doesn't have the risk of bleeding out because of her legs. I know all that seems like a lot, which it is, but I think it's pretty well balanced because of the whole not being able to control half her powers thing. Also that she outright has no interest in learning how to control the legs. With that done, let's move on to The homemade suit. Every Spider-Person's starting point. For the parts of her story that I have figured out, which isn't that much, this is the suit that she wears for a big majority of it, with her main suit coming in much later. As you can probably tell, the main inspiration for this design comes from the homemade suit in Spider-Man Homecoming, as well as this one that I found on Reddit. I used these as a base while adding more utility via the cargo pants and backpack. As you'll see, the normal clothes this character wears are very comfy and practical, which I think would influence how she decides to make her suit. Rather than spending a ton of money on a spandex suit that isn't really gonna hold up to wear and tear, she probably thrifted some stuff and made do with what she could get, which I think we can all agree is a very Spider-Man thing to do. Rather than having some high-tech, shrinking lens goggles, hers are just normal, clear plastic goggles. Since, again, I'm not a scientist. Short of having an expensive face shell, I didn't think there was a functional way to have cool mask lenses on a homemade suit until I watched Ben Rebuild's video where he recreates the Bodega cat suit from Spider-Man Miles Morales, using foam and PC mesh for some makeshift lenses. I'll leave the link to it in the description. Being able to see her eyes through the goggles is somewhat of a plot point, so maybe I'll have her make these when they fall off or break and she gets an idea for something new. I don't know. I decided on fingerless gloves because I figured that suddenly having really sticky hands would be pretty jarring, so in order to get used to it, she would want to feel whatever surface she's sticking to. Plus, they just look cool, come on. Both of the original designs I mentioned have either long socks or sleeves on their legs, and while it's a fun design choice, I eventually decided against it since it kinda just adds another thing to put on that really isn't practical if you need to suit up quickly. For the symbol, I wanted it to have a sort of innocent design to it, if that makes sense. The symbol on the homemade suit in Homecoming is very round and, well, friendly looking, I guess you could say, so she probably worked that into the design. But on the flip side, she also wants it to look cool and have those sharp angles that the most iconic spider symbols have, while also making it her own, which plays into the theme of wanting to live up to the Spider-Man title. So the symbol I decided on has a round head with a sort of rounded, diamond-shaped body, and sharp spiked legs that are disconnected from the rest of it. I don't think there are many symbols that do that, which is a real shame because I think the look of it is really cool. Now, because of the weather in LA and how bipolar it is, there is a winter and a summer version of this suit. The overall look is still the same, but the winter one has thicker pants and long sleeves with some actual webbing drawn onto them. Side note, Peter could have just saved himself some money and trouble if he just wore the big winter suit in Spectacular Spider-Man. It honestly wasn't even that bad, but I guess the animators didn't want to deal with animating it, which, fair enough. For the coloring, purple's my favorite color, so that was sort of a given, but between these two suits, I wanted there to be some differences. For starters, the hoodie on the winter version has a more dull purple color. I did this because I wanted to sort of show how these are two separate outfits, and trust me, no two purple hoodies are the same type of purple. That was just a small detail. It also uniquely has webbing drawn onto the forearms and lacks the black hood that the summer suit has. It's not a large difference, but it keeps things visually interesting. Midway through coloring everything in, I noticed that with all the black in the suit, as well as the backpack, the values started to get a little muddy and hard to read. So I ended up making it more of a navy blue, which works out perfectly since the final suit also has blue accents to it, and is also sort of a nod to Peter's backpack in the first TASM movie, minus the skateboard straps. Lastly, both suits also have the convenience of being very easy and cheap to repair, unlike Lycra or spandex since it's basically just normal clothes. Because of that, she most definitely carries a mini sewing kit in her backpack, as well as other things like snacks, a first aid kit, cash, a knife or box cutter, a notepad for those silly little notes that Spider-Man leaves all the time, and other helpful things like that. No webbing backpacks to walls with this spider, no no no. It's kind of funny because if you do the math, in the PS4 game alone, Peter would have spent $2,500 on just backpacks if he hadn't won a lifetime supply of them. No wonder the guy's broke. Now with that done, we can move on to the main suit. A spider's final form, if you will. Well, until they make a new one, that is. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen it a few times by now, but I'll break down what exactly went into designing it. As you can probably tell, the design draws a lot of inspiration from Peter and Miles' base suits in the PlayStation games, as well as Spider-Gwen and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit. The fact that there's such big influences makes sense both in and out of character, cause, well, both me and this character are big fans and have a lot of different sources to draw from. Literally. The sort of fingerless style glove design, patches of webbing on the hips, knee and knuckle pads, the white spider, and the hood are all examples of things that were directly pulled from characters who already exist. The hood in particular fits really well because I love to wear hoodies or really anything with a hood on it, but almost never actually use it. Now for the actual design, I'll start with one of the more obvious elements. It's pretty much the standard that a Spider-Man suit has some sort of webbing on it, but with characters like Ben Reilly and Spider-Gwen, no webbing works just as well. But I've yet to see an official suit, or even a Sona, with incomplete webbing. This was one of the first ways I deviated from standard suit designs. I just couldn't get the webbing on the body and face to look right, so I thought, I just won't do it, and opted to only add webbing to the arms, legs, hip patches, and fingers. I think the result is really unique looking, and stands out among other suits we already know. As a sort of practicality thing, I added some holes in the suit where she can shoot her webs without any obstruction. Now I don't know if Toby's suit also had something like that, because it sure looks like it's just a solid glove, but this character would want to be extra sure the webs won't snag on anything when she needs to catch herself from a free fall. For the lenses, I based them off the ones from the 2017 Spider-Man show. Not a great show, but from the few episodes I watched, it had its moments. I made the top of the lenses have this double spiked edge to add some visual interest, and some people have told me they look like little eyelashes. That wasn't intentional, but I think it's a cute detail. Considering this is a more realistic take on Spider-Man, I'm torn between having the lenses stay static, like in Amazing Spider-Man 2, or have them move and emote a lot like in Spider-Verse, since it's still animated. I have an idea, but let me know in the comments what you think. Moving on. The coloring, again, was sort of a given since purple's my favorite color, but the secondary, tertiary, and accent colors have changed a bit from my first design. In said design, the colors were this really muted purple and navy blue, with black, silver, and light blue as the accent colors. There are parts of it that I still like, but this current design I think is a lot more cohesive and, well, just better looking in general. You can still find the old design if you look at my older posts on Instagram. The white spider symbol is something a lot of aspiring Spidersonas like to use, and for good reason. It adds another bit of white that connects to the eyes, which many official designs don't have. But I think if the advanced suit didn't exist, this character's symbol would still end up white, as it really just ties the whole look together and stands out more. Plus, the black symbol just sort of blended into the rest of the suit and didn't really look right. Now, I don't know if you know this, but skin-tight superhero suits aren't exactly the easiest thing to make, nor the cheapest. This is one of the reasons this character has her homemade suit for so long. I realize it's not the most favored writing choice, but with how I'm planning out the story, she'll probably end up getting the suit made for her by someone. Still figuring out who, though. Hey, she's not Peter, I'm not gonna make her have to do everything the hard way. When she does finally get this suit, I can totally imagine that when it gets colder, she would use parts of her old homemade suit to keep her warm. I think it's a cute idea, but I guess we'll have to see how badly it gets damaged before I make it canon. Speaking of canon, like I mentioned before, her universe is pretty much the same as ours. And because of that, it's sort of a headcanon of mine that the Spider Society isn't allowed to go to universes that don't have a spider person in them, to avoid possibly breaking that universe's canon. I won't go into too much detail, but because our Violet friend here has powers in a world where they don't exist, she might get a not-so-friendly visit from HQ. And as if that wasn't enough, the police and government would be on her tail for the exact same reason. The media, I think, would have a very media reaction to her as well, wherein a lot of younger people would be excited and supportive of her, while older people and wannabe J. Jonahs would feel threatened and find reasons to try and make her the enemy. I think a lot of that would circle back to Spider-Man being on a pedestal. The shows, the games, the movies, the comics, all of that is in our universe, and all of that would be used to nitpick and compare. And can you really compete with all that? No. So she just keeps her head up and tries to tune it out. Keyword tries. Writing all this down, I realized that her suits taking different elements from different spider people could also be attributed to her wanting to be liked, which, ouch. But enough about Spider-Man, let's talk about the person behind the mask. Can't be a superhero without a secret identity. Well, I guess you can, but I don't know how well that'd work out for you. Since this character is basically me, but a little different and cooler, a lot of things are the same. I'm currently an animation major in college, so she probably is too. But if not, she probably has a stable job at the very least. The overall clothing style is also the same, but a little more emphasized, if that makes sense. It's very comfy, tomboy, and I want to say grungy look, but actual grunge people would probably come for me, so I'll refrain. It's very thrown together, I guess you could say. From a character perspective, especially after getting her powers, I think this sort of style makes sense for her. I think she would wear clothes that keep her covered in order to hide her powers, and any scars or wounds she got whilst doing spider things. So her wardrobe would start to reflect that as her journey goes on. Building on that, I think it's a fun thought that she would thrift some bracelets or tear up some old t-shirts to make wraps for her wrists, to, you know, cover the web holes. You could argue that that's more conspicuous, but to that I say, shut up! On a smaller note, she's got hair that perpetually has bits sticking out, dark circles because I'm always tired and have a horrible sleep schedule, and generally has a timid nature about her, which was also amplified after getting her powers. Her non-hero life I think would mostly be unchanged, and if anything made a little better. She'd probably be able to focus longer on schoolwork, notice little things that she couldn't before, and obviously having insane reflexes would be pretty helpful for a number of reasons. She'd probably end up getting a little overconfident, like all spiders do, but not to the point where she'd go and make trouble. While we're on senses, I did want to talk about her spider sense a little. I would have put it in the abilities section, but it was already too long and I really didn't feel like opening the file. We've seen in the past that spider sense isn't strictly limited to sensing direct incoming danger. In the Spider-Verse movies, Gwen's spider sense told her to go to Vision's academy, and in one of the shorts, Miles' spider sense reacts to something that isn't there due to his anxiety. And in No Way Home, Peter's goes off when Norman starts to turn back into Green Goblin. Knowing all that, I think we can bend the parameters and put a unique spin on it. So obviously she gets the normal warning when danger is nearby, even if it's not directed at her, but given that her sight and hearing are super amplified, we can say the range for how far she can sense something is a bit bigger. And fun fact, the spider sense is the reason Spider-Man can swing without hitting the ground and fight despite having no training, which I think is pretty neat. Anyway, since danger is a pretty broad category, it can apply to a lot of things, especially outside of combat. In this instance, her spider sense will go off if someone isn't being entirely truthful, or is hiding something. It's not a straight up lie detector, because that would be broken, but it's particularly useful when interrogating criminals. Her sense also reacts to her own actions. What I mean by this is, if she's about to say or do something that will get her in trouble or danger, her sense will go off. For example, if she's about to let slip the fact that she's Spider-Girl to a friend or family member, her sense will go off as she's forming the sentence in her head. There's more, but that's all I can really say without having any visual representation to help explain it. So stay tuned, I guess. I'll show and not tell the rest. Where was I? Oh yeah, the fit. A lot of the outfits I design are more suited for colder weather, because I love layers and they just look cooler anyway. And I just have Peter's normal outfit from Spectacular Spider-Man in real life, so she does too. And we both randomly wear it out just to be funny and see if anyone notices. That's really all I've got, so next up is... Alright, last one. Streetwear. This first design is more of an in-between streetwear suit. By that I mean it's not a permanent look, but one she throws together after her homemade suit gets wrecked. There's still lots of scrapes and tears and general damage, which I think not only adds to it, but tells a story in its own way. It's a simple design, consisting of a hooded flannel to replace the purple hoodie, the torn remains of her cargo pants and mask, with the same black shirt and gloves underneath. There's a lot of parts to her story I still need to figure out, but I will say that at this point, the weight of being Spider-Man really sets in. She experiences loss and is forced to do everything in her power to stop the rogue who wants her dead, which she's never had to do before. It marks a turning point where she realizes what's happening, and that this mantle is one that belongs to her, whether she likes it or not. This is also what leads into her getting her main suit. Now the actual streetwear design was surprisingly difficult to nail down. Since there's already so much black on her suit, it was hard to find an array of colors and clothes that complemented that, while also being both true to character and unique. I ended up looking on Pinterest for some layered, grunge outfit ideas, since that's what I was aiming for, but in the end it didn't really look like any of them. This one has a different green flannel on top. The first one has a hood, this one doesn't. Why do I have so many green flannels, you ask? Because Peter wears one in Spider-Man PS4 and I might kinda have a thing for him. Yes, PS4 specifically. No hate to Ben Jordan though, he's handsome too. Whoever Peter's barber is in the second game needs to lose their license though. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, the hood from the actual suit pokes out from underneath the shirt, which is a heather blue t-shirt with a beige long sleeve underneath. Seem familiar? I paired that with some sweatpants that I coincidentally am wearing right now, and a brown beanie. A detail about this suit that I like is that the hood is actually up, and I think that could be a funny character thing. Like, if she's in a particularly bad mood, she'll have it up, which would not only be more intimidating, but maybe even deter would-be criminals. Almost like her version of Spider-Man joking versus not joking, though that applies to her too. She's also got her black backpack with a new smaller bag on her chest for more storage, and to top it off, some wired earbuds for mid-swing music. Maybe the chest bag is specifically to hold her phone while she swings, I don't know. I overall really like the look and vibe of this suit, but you know me, I might change parts of it in the future. But for now, that's gonna round out Spider-Girl's wardrobe. Until someone else joins the picture, that is. So yeah, those are all my SPIDERSONA designs so far. Well, the ones I'm telling you about at least. I'm really happy with how all of them came out, and for the time being, I think they'll stay the way they are. With what I'm planning, I can't say some redesigns won't happen, but that's a video for another day. Maybe I'll add some more variations though. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Which was your favorite, what you liked, what you think could improve. I want to hear all of it. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and make sure to check out the full animation if you haven't already. I promise you won't be disappointed. And with that, I will see you all next time I do a video like this. Whenever that may be. See ya!